Good morning, everyone. Just checking my sound is on. Good morning. Welcome to Solid Ground with me, Simon O'Connor, here as part of the Family First crew, as we talk the politics, the social, the cultural events of the day live. And it is live today. I am back in my treehouse studio in Auckland. So know that if you're on the Family First YouTube or Facebook page, or the YouTube channel and the Facebook page, you can comment live here to the studio and I will reply. But as I say, Solid Ground is where we talk the issues of the day from a proudly conservative point of view. It's why we call it Solid Ground. But as regulars know, I also like a good pun or a double entendre. And so a Solid Ground always references, of course, a good cup of coffee, which is about the only thing keeping me warm at the moment, because when I got in the treehouse, it was 0 degrees. It is freezing cold. Just moving my coffee here to the right side. So freezing cold. So excuse a number of things this morning. One, that I'm just wearing a sweatshirt. It is very cold. And secondly, I didn't get to shave. The great joys of living in a smaller apartment now, by choice, sometimes means you can't get to the bathroom in time. So it was occupied this morning, so you get not only chilly Simon, but a Simon who hasn't shaved. All right, I'm being told to put the microphone up a little bit there. Hopefully that makes it better for the crew. So again, good morning and welcome. As I say, it is live because last Tuesday, well, the Tuesday just passed, actually I was flying to Christchurch. God, where was I going? I was flying to Christchurch to join what's known as Activate. Activate is a pro-life conference, a pro-life week actually. It's not really a conference actually. It is a group of usually young people, but not just that. Think about 30 people committed to the pro-life cause who join Brendan Malone, and many of you will know Brendan. He's been on the podcast, he himself a cultural commentator, one of the leading people in the pro-life movement. But he holds 2 of these Activate camps a year. And it's basically a week where they live in, so all the food, everything's taken care of. And they talk about pro-life issues, from abortion, as you imagine, to euthanasia, eugenics, all of that, and actually an amazing underpinning, which is really, really cool. And for some reason, they keep inviting me down, and it's to give some political perspective, not only how politics works, but also how the pro-life movement is or isn't faring in the political realm. So giving them a few tips, but it was also cold down there, so I didn't turn up in a usually professional blazer and a shirt. Far too cold in Christchurch. So yes, me and my little white hoodie. So anyway, that was why on Tuesday I had pre-recorded one of these shows, and so. Anyway, it is live today and I can see the comments, just to prove to newbies that the comments are coming in. So good morning to Lynette, to Rosie. I'm not surprised it's chilly. Muddy Waters there in Invercargill, probably thinking that Simon complaining about 0 degrees in his treehouse is nothing. Jackie, good morning to you. Dean, lovely to have you along. Good morning to New Zealand. Nita, lovely to have you there. Robin, good morning. Mike, lovely to have you. And I think it was your good self, Mike, saying to put the microphone up. Darren, lovely to have you along. Good morning. Sam, gosh, there's people everywhere. A jolly good morning all from Food Dogs Trucking. Peter, lovely to have you along. Yes, look, this sounds like some self-advertising going on here, but it is welcome. I do need a woolly hat. Or I often will wear a baseball cap when I'm out and about, if it's cool, but probably a woolly hat would be better. We've got Pat there from Titirangi. Cup of coffee is the way to go. Bernice, lovely to have you along. So look, great guys. Good morning, good morning. We've got all these people. Look, amazing to have you along. So good morning. As I say, was away. Activate was incredible. On Tuesday, as I say, I talked about the change in curriculum, the education curriculum in New Zealand. And I applauded that they were bringing Holocaust education into the curriculum. I think that's really important. As I mentioned on Tuesday, not only is it, I would say, one of the most significant historical events in the last few decades, it's also one that, in my view, actually a number of people's view, is being misused now. People running about screaming Holocaust for just about everything. I find that wrong, basically, historically wrong, and it's quite inaccurate. The Holocaust, as I keep saying, I've given talks about this in and around the country, the Holocaust is a unique event, and trying to universalize it to take that atrocity in the Second World War and then apply it to everything else since, I think actually does an injustice. So I think it's good that actually Kiwi kids are going to learn about it. And actually someone commented on my Facebook page to say, will there be education, like New Zealanders did not accept Jewish refugees, for example. And I actually think that's, yes, would hopefully be the answer. It comes down to the individual teacher. But I just think that's really good. But I then mentioned that climate change was not going to be taught. But frustratingly, since Tuesday, the government has done a U-turn, which I think is wrong. Well, not the right thing to do. Wrong implies sort of some sort of moral failure. I don't think it's quite that. But they're going to put climate change back into the junior curriculum. Now, the thing about climate change is it's become an ideologically captured issue. And so ultimately it becomes a propaganda to young people. They're going to be told, often by activist teachers, that the whole world is on fire and we're all going to die. That's pretty much the narrative. And it's one of the reasons, and I want to stress the word one, it's one of the reasons a lot of our young people have greater anxiety, fear and depression, is because they're being told from their teachers and actually sometimes their parents, the university lecturers and the media, that, as I say, the world's on fire and we're all going to die. Simultaneously, there are viruses around that are going to kill us as well. I mean, no wonder, amongst other reasons, the young people are depressed. So I don't think there's any need for it, because the other thing around climate change is, are we teaching climate change? Are we teaching climate adaptation? Are we teaching that actually just climate does change? Is it that, in and of itself, it has been for millennia? Are we teaching that this is all man-made? Or are people actually trying to be slightly more scientific and saying, well, look, it's not clear if anthropogenic climate change is actually a thing. We just don't know. But what we do know is that the media, and certainly like in academia, the commentariat, are very big to play climate change as a massive issue. Because a bit like the Treaty of Waitangi, actually, guys, it's a vanguard issue. In other words, it's like the tip of a spear, which particularly the progressives, the left, can use to push through a whole series of their ideas. We've got to do this, and this because of climate change. Oh, we have to change the way we work in healthcare and in the ministries and bureaucracies because of the treaty. These are vanguard issues that are often misused. So look, I think unfortunate, and I can see some people saying here, the world's been cooling and warming since time began. Exactly right. We're being ripped off with climate change. So I should put some of that up, shouldn't I? That was Raymond with the first one. Dean, yeah, it's a climate cycle. Look, what I'm saying, and there is a range of views on this, and I'm worried. Well, not worried. I just don't think it's the way forward to be, teachers, doubly so to young ones. Again, teach kids, as I said the other day on Tuesday morning, teach the kids to understand, of course, that we have a climate, but then teach them engineering, teach them around adaptation. How do we actually do better fire control? How do we build safer houses? These are the way forward. These are, if you will, hope-filled approaches, which we as humans have had almost for millennia as well. We are always learning to adapt to our climate, to change. So anyway, crazy, but also I didn't like, and maybe Bob and I will pick this up on political playback, I didn't like the fact that the minister did a U-turn. Again, this is an election year, it's not a good look. But she also implied, as the story reported it, so it's possible that it's got it wrong, the journalist has got it wrong, but I don't think so, that she didn't realise it had been taken out. And it's like, you've got to be on top of your brief. And it's got echoes, unfortunately, in the same space of a few months ago, where, and this was, I think, the adherence to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi was in a cabinet paper, then it was out, then the bureaucrats brought it back in, and the minister said take it out, and then the bureaucrats put it back in again. No one seemed to know what's going on. So again, a little unhappy around that. But yeah, international news. Just adjust my headphone there. International news, big court case at the moment. I think it's in California, but a number of their district attorneys, so it's the equivalent of our Crown prosecutors here, are taking Meta to court. And as you can see in the headline, they're accusing them of targeting children. So basically setting up the algorithms of Facebook and Instagram to attract more children, to hoover up their data. So look, very significant. Just one of many lawsuits now. I saw on the news last night a number of parents actually speaking and saying, look, their child suicided, ended their life early, which I mean is just beyond painful to even ponder. But blaming Meta, as you can imagine, is saying, well, look, we've got all these safeguards, we're doing what we can, and we're not responsible. That's their big defence point, always has been. It's all the social media tech giants, by the way. They say, we are not responsible for what others put on our platforms, and there's no robustness to that defence. But look, significant case, really big case. Let's see where it goes. They're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars of fines. I don't believe that'll be the case. There's Simon's opinion for the day. I think there's a good chance that Meta could lose the case. They don't think they will. But if Meta were to lose its case, first and foremost, it would be a big shake-up for the industry. More responsibility by the tech giants would be needed in terms of what they are feeding to young people. But I can't see the court, giving out billions and trillions of dollars of fines. It's just like so many things here, even in the New Zealand courts, people pitch for a huge fine and a very small one. Very small one comes through. I'm just looking at I set people off with the climate change question. Look, there is a lot to discuss there. As I say, we may well bring it back up on political playback tonight. Bob and I are just working through the various topics. Another one that caught my eye, and this is actually from the crew at RCR. You might remember, this is all around the COVID times, around the vaccine. Actually, I should set it up, shouldn't I, the topic. This is about the second dose of the COVID vaccine to 12 and 17-year-olds. And if you've been following the news, I think it was a couple of months ago, and again, it was the team at RCR. They're very good at doing the OIAs. They discovered that actually the medical advice, the clear medical advice, was to not to give a second COVID vaccine to young people, to those between 12 and 17. So if I remember it correctly, 1 shot was recommended, 2 shots was not. So definitely no to 2 shots. That was the medical advice. It said, look, there's a notable and increased risk of something called myocarditis. So it's an inflammation around the heart. And in fact, we are seeing examples of that now, unfortunately, often in young boys, not exclusively, but higher proportion of young boys. Sadly, frustratingly, angrily, if you will, the likes of Chris Hipkins, Asher Verrill, and also Ashley Bloomfield, a number of others, ignored it. They wrote about it, they talked about it, they acknowledged that 2 shots to kids was not the right way to go, but they did it anyway. Quite scandalous when you think about it. Certainly not a responsible action. And angering, because this affects young people. I mean, it shouldn't be done. A vaccine, any drug shouldn't be given to people if it's, there are warnings from the health professionals. But the Labour government, Ashley Bloomfield and others, went ahead with it. In fact, they did, if you remember the 2 shots for summer, there was a big campaign that the government pushed to get young people to get this double vaccination, even though they knew. And so in recent OIA, so Official Information Act requests, the crew at RCR have now flushed out the numbers that actually 257,000 young people in New Zealand were exposed because of using or having the 2 shots, which they were told, again, the government was told not to do. Now, that doesn't mean, really importantly, that does not mean that over 311,000 young people have myocarditis or pericarditis, but they've been put at risk, and risk that they should not have been put in. That's really the simple answer. So kudos actually to the crew at RCR. I mean, there's nothing now that we can do other than obviously treat those who do come down with something like myocarditis. There's nothing we can do other than hold those who made those decisions accountable. Remember, one of them is Chris Hipkins. He wants to be the next Prime Minister. The man who ignored medical advice and made sure that most of our young people got double shots of COVID vaccines when they didn't need it and would have increased their risk to things like myocarditis. He's responsible and wants another crack. So absolutely terrible. They need to be held to account, and we need to learn from it. That's the other thing. We need to learn from these things. So as I say, kudos to the RCR crew on that one. Really important. Switching topics. Before I'll do you a short ad break, because I need to tell you about the forum. Dear old Winston, doesn't he smile like a Cheshire cat? Again, Bob and I may well talk about this more tonight, but it caught my eye in the news this morning. A poll has shown that 59%, so that's 59% of Kiwis agree with the New Zealand First policy that only citizens should vote in elections. Now, there is an element of sort of the migrant dog whistling, which New Zealand First likes to do, but actually I think it's a sensible policy. I think for me, over many years, I used to be asked this when I was in Parliament, what's the benefits of citizenship in New Zealand? And to be honest, there are very few. Because if you're a permanent resident, and by the way, if you're a permanent resident here, welcome. Lovely to have you here in New Zealand. But permanent residents can vote, and basically there's almost no distinction between a citizen and a permanent resident in New Zealand. New Zealand First is saying there should be, and look, you guys can make up your mind if it's good or not, but I just thought it was interesting that a poll that came out, I think it might have been through Courier Research, said 59% of people agree with it. So I don't know about yourselves, but I think it's another example of how Winston, he is very clever. And this is not for me waving flags for political parties here. I mean, here on Solid Ground and even on Political Playback, my job is to try and be as objective as possible. But he knows how to find just the little issues that just animate a number of people. So anyway, go Winston. And now to upset you all, this I saw in the Listener, the dear old New Zealand Listener. I don't know why anyone still buys it, but anyway, trumpeting Helen Clark. And I doubt we'll talk about this on Political Playback, which is why I'm bringing it this morning. I just do not understand why Helen Clark is the go-to on just about every topic, whether it's Luxon leadership, whether it's around the UN or Gaza, and now a full interview in the Listener of her saying, I think New Zealand's treading water and we need to lurch forward. I mean, these are meaningless statements of a former politician. Excuse me. So I don't know why the media constantly go after her, other than, of course, she's one of the only, what's the right word, not knowledgeable, acceptable left-wing voices. I think the more you see Helen Clark, and you see her all the time, tells you a lot about the state of the left wing in New Zealand. The media would prefer to talk to her than they would to Chris Hipkins or to Carmel Cipollone or even to Chloe Swarlbach, Marama Davison. They prefer to talk to Helen. Of course, too, she's a globalist. She's a great fan of the UN and wanting us to capitulate our sovereignty to that. And also she holds very, as you'd expect from Helen, very strong left-wing views. Someone is saying here, please do not give, and by the way, good morning, Tamsin, Helen Clark, any airtime. Look, I ummed and ahed quite genuinely when I was putting this up. Notice you'll get the likes of John Key from time to time will pass comment, but nowhere near the same, because John, I think, Bill English and others are smart enough. The more that a former leader is talking is actually a statement about the current leaders. If you need the Helens of the world to be talking into the public sphere and the media indulging it, it says a lot about the current left-wing leadership. But she clearly can't let go of the reins either. So yeah, nutty. Not so much an ad break actually, but I might just remind you, we have of course the Forum on the Family. In fact, I'll put this one up first. We have the Forum on the Family coming up in only a few weeks. We are selling seats like hotcakes, but we also have a massive new venue. We're at the Victory Convention Centre, which is pretty exciting in and of itself. An amazing lineup of speakers. There's a student rate. There are still seats. We'll feed and water you. You will get to meet these amazing people. And as I previewed, I hope on Tuesday, or maybe it was on Thursday, we also have these really cool panels. So not only is there Martin Isles, you'll hear from Ben Carson, there's Sal Grover, Julian Spencer, Andrew Amos, an amazing array of speakers. We're also doing these panels. So like Leah Parnapa from the platform, Chris Lynch, Dave Gooselink, that's in the media panel. There's a political panel, so I'm talking to either former MPs, couldn't get any current ones, unfortunately. They're always a bit nervous, maybe because I was going to be interviewing them. We're going to hear from Younger Voices. The Counterculture panel will be there. So if you're following Counterculture online, you'll actually get to see them in person. And then I'm hosting the medical panel. We've got doctors, medical professionals to talk to us about their experiences, particularly in, again, the pro-life space, the conservative space. What are the challenging elements within medicine at the moment? So a free and frank discussion there. So I think pretty cool. So come to the forum if you can. Auckland, the 11th to 12th of September, the Victory Convention Centre. It is going to be awesome. You can even meet me if you want. You don't have to. And as Food Dogs Train, it is quite the lineup, except for me. But, you can avoid me because you know what I look like. Give me a moment. I am just going to take a cup of coffee. See, this is not just a hand warmer or a prop. It does help me keep my voice. There we go. And now I'm spilling it. God, I'm falling to pieces this morning, guys. Can't even shave. So, news. This, I'm sure Bob has talked about this. This is actually quite a significant change with WPATH. So they are the professional, they call themselves, organisation that promotes the transing of children. So they are all for puberty blockers. They love cross-sex hormones. They're all for mutilating young people. Basically a bunch of activists. This is the global body who write up the guidelines and make it sound all very professional and scientific and medically based. It is all a crock. It's all based around lies. And WPATH has its New Zealand equivalent. It's called PATHA. PATHA are the ones fighting the Ministry of Health at the moment because they are desperate to continue medicalising children. PATH are just like WPATH, are very keen to chemicalise and medicalise children and to tell them wrongly, falsely and unscientifically that you can change your biological sex. I mean, it's just absolutely so barking mad. I don't even know why we have these conversations or have to have them. But anyway, we have barking mad people in society. But what was significant is in a court case, because in America, and actually this is, a positive, a number of states, another number of groups now are taking the likes of WPATH to court and saying actually what they're doing is wrong, which is great. But what was significant is that in a recent court case, for the first time, WPATH admitted that its view is just an opinion. It is one opinion amongst others. Now that's really significant, guys, because up till now, the only way that the trans lobby has been able to hold ground, and that includes WPATH, is to say that their view is the only view. Their particular perspective on the issue is it. There's no other way to think about it. And that's then flowed into their, basically, cancel culture, their thuggish culture, which you've heard me talk before. Thuggery is unfortunately part of the trans lobby. It's a very masculine thing at the end of the day, isn't it? But WPATH, PATHA, trans lobbyists have done all and everything they can to shut down any debate. Anyone who dares to question, as I think of the J.K. Rowlings. There we go. Voice is coming back. But think of the J.K. Rowling. Think of obviously Posey Parker here in New Zealand. Think of actually Annie O'Brien and the Free Speech Union a couple of weeks ago, who were going to be talking at supposedly a Pride-aligned council venue. The trans lobbyists were in the forefront of trying to shut these people down. But WPATH has come out in court and admitted theirs is only an opinion. One opinion amongst others, which again is quite an extraordinary admission. Admission. God, it's not an omission. It's an admission. So I just think very significant. I said the only ones who are reporting it, of course, is Family First, because your mainstream media would never want to actually put the likes of WPATH or PATHA, put their feet to the fire. And Muddy Waters sums it up. WPATH are frauds. They are. And I really do hope that they, the likes of PATHA, are held to account. By the way, guys, a lot of these groups, like PATHA in New Zealand, very few actually medical people. It's just a whole lot of activists who run it. And it's one of the things I certainly learned in politics, and it goes much broader than this area. There's a whole lot of groups and colleges and associations that form up, and they've got all these grand-sounding titles. But more often than not, it's just one or two activists who, well, kudos to them. They've taken the time to form an association. But just because someone says they are, I'm from PATHA, doesn't give them any more legitimacy than anything. And as NZ Knit is saying, yeah, I was upset too with the Posey Parker event, not because I was there, but basically it was violence, stirred up violence by the left wing. Remember, is it Martima Davison running along telling that all the violence in the world is caused by her term, cis white men? And then I think I've forgotten what the exact attacks were afterwards, but around New Zealand and around the world, I can tell you now it wasn't cis white men doing it, but it was a violent action, and the police stood by. It was just terrible. It was just terrible. Yeah, and Lisa's right too. Many powerful organisations have taken that opinion. They have, and it's actually one of the things we'll be bringing up on the medical panel. at the forum is how is it that so many good doctors, nurses, health professionals and associations have gone along with the obvious fraud, and I would add abuse, that is trans ideology. Actually, speaking of ideology, and I'll wrap up here, I thought this was a couple of days old now, what a stupid headline. An absolutely stupid headline, and no offence to this All Black, if he is carrying the shame of being Dutch as he plays the Springboks, then good Lord, he has to grow up. I mean, this is the critical race theory, it's critical theory, cultural Marxism writ large. Why is a young All Black today needing to hold colonial shame when playing, in this case, the Springboks? Of course there's no need. He was not involved in the apartheid regime, I assume. I doubt he was even born. I mean, this is just a divisive element of critical race theory, which just imbue through our society. It's also the use of the word colonial or colonialism. It's sort of meant to be the boogeyman now, which is taken by the activists to not only talk about a historical period, but say, oh no, it's still going on. Our democratic and liberal structures now, oh, it's all terrible, it's still all colonial. We have to rip it all down and go back to God knows what, of course. You notice they never tell you what we're going to go back to if we strip away the human rights that we have today, the liberal freedoms we've got to know in the West. But I thought this was just stupid headline. And look, if this is what he thinks, he's welcome to think it, but absolutely stupid. I mean, are the Japanese going around and the Germans carrying their guilt and shame from World War II? No, and they shouldn't have to. You can acknowledge history, but the idea, I think it's actually often used online, as the 7-year-old Japanese girl meant to be apologising to New Zealanders every time she sees them for what happened in the Second World War. You get a lot of this around slavery. Somehow people are meant to be apologising for what ancestors did years and years ago. And look, in the more New Zealand context, we get it around the Maori Crown relationships, events that happened hundreds of years ago. And I think it was actually Thomas Sowell, and I don't have his quote in front of me, says, isn't it striking how we're meant to be, responsible and guilty for the past actions of our ancestors, which we had nothing to do with, and yet those same people have no responsibility for their actions today, which doesn't that sum up the woke and the left wing perfectly? No responsibility for anything they do today. It's always someone else's fault. But somehow, because in this case you have Dutch heritage, you're going to feel shame while playing the Springboks. Just barking mad to me. Absolutely barking mad. Anyway, typical, I've run out of time. A reminder, it's Thursday, so Bob and I will be back in a few hours. 5 p.m. tonight live, we'll be doing political playback. And as you know, Bob and I continue to write and use Substack, so go across and check that out. Bob obviously has his shows, his writings there. I've recently written this week about the National Party coup. If you want some of my, I suppose, somewhat inside views, come and have a read. Get my take on what happened, why Chris Pink was tossed out, and why it's all going to happen again. So yeah. Oh, and also, of course, there's always Family Matters. The new one out this week, actually, I didn't have time to load it. It is with Dr. Kevin Donnelly. We talk about multiculturalism. We talk about why multiculturalism has failed and why it will continue to fail, and why we need to talk about it. So yeah, guys, lots on as always. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. See many of you tonight on Political Playback. Otherwise, I'll see you here live next Tuesday morning.